Right. Thank you, everyone, and good evening. So the topic I'm going to talk about is the turbulence and the reality behind launching any business, right? So maybe I'd like to start my talk with asking you to imagine something that is quite familiar to all of us. So just imagine you're going to take a flight to some destination. So we go to an airport, and we get onto the plane, we get to a seat, we buckle up, and the plane gets onto a tarmac, and engines roar, and then we take off. But just a few minutes into the takeoff, once we leave the ground, the plane starts shaking. And that's turbulence, right? That's something familiar to all of us. And some of us are quite comfortable with that. We get comfortable over time while we travel a lot, but there are a lot of people still not comfortable with that. But whether we like it or not, turbulence is there in most of the flights. And the unique thing or the interesting part here is this turbulence is actually caused by the factors that are completely external to that, and that has nothing to do with the plane. The planes are designed to be extremely safe, the most reliable machines that human has ever built, and they can handle that. But still we feel it, and that's causing because of external factors like winds, environments, weather conditions, etc. So now think about a scenario where a pilot is asked to fly a plane that is actually getting built, that is not yet built, like the brilliant planes that I was talking about earlier. And then he hits an external turbulence as well. So there you go. That's what it feels like starting a new company. So with all the uncertainties that you have, and with all the fears, and with a lot of things that you don't know, so it's exactly how it feels. It's more like a turbulence squared or a turbulence cubed. So now, for any company to start with, it always starts with an idea, right? Now, what I get or what I see a lot of people when I talk to them is the first limitation or the first barrier that they have is where to start. They say that I have an idea, but where to start? And recently I was actually at an event, an entrepreneurship event, where I was amazed to see the kind of ambition and the kind of enthusiasm from entrepreneurs from even tier 2, tier 3 cities of India. But all of them have one common question: I have an idea, where to start? So now this is one skill that every one of us who wants to be an entrepreneur have to learn on how to turn your idea into a real company, right? That is something that cannot be taught by others, but that has to be done with iterations, and that has to be done by us, that has to be tried with wherever, irrespective of where you want to start. You just have to go, start it, and build it over time. And that's the skill that only a person who is building can know, and it's very hard to teach. So you have to learn through your journey. So now, there is no magic into it. So whenever you figure this out on how you can start and move forward, that's what people call a strategy, and they give big names and big words to it. But it's all about doing that initial grind and having that courage to start and moving forward even in the times of obstacles. So, well, you have a strategy in place, but again, the question comes on, when you have a strategy, how do you break that strategy down into multiple milestones? So if you look at, again, what worked for me when I built my company, or when I was at a startup again, which was starting from scratch. So what worked for me was always trying to breaking down the big vision and the big idea that we have into very small milestones, and finding out the first milestone that we can achieve by ourselves. So what that does is, once you can really achieve that first milestone, it gives you a mental framework of how do you start from scratch, how do you beat the barriers of some courage to start, and also how can you progress, how can you measure your progress, and how you can completely close an activity. And this framework, once you get it, is going to be with you forever. And this framework is going to be unique for everyone. So what works for me may not work for many of the people here, or what works for like all the great names that JS talked about before doesn't work for us, right? So it's like, again, if I have to take analogies, some people like to learn through reading, some people like to learn through watching people, some people like to learn through audiobooks. So it's different for different people. But once you build that framework for you, that stays with you and helps a lot when you go forward and in the journey build with much larger complex teams and working with larger complex problems as well. So now, with all these in place, the other big question we always have, something that I myself has been learning a lot, is about how do you go to a market, and how do you brand your company. So I would say at the very early stage, all these fancy terms as GTM and branding looks very intimidating, but the best thing that worked again for us and is working so far is keeping things very simple. Because all we need is just like how we want to choose a small set of the whole problem that we wanted to build. Even for a GTM, we want to choose a small set of customers that are willing to use a product and that are willing to work with us. And we'll have to make sure that these set of customers that love the product very much. And why would that help? Again, is it helps in two ways. You don't want to really spread out too much. And in the beginning, everybody who starts and comes with their product and enters the market is definitely going to make mistakes. There is never going to be a perfect solution. And for you to have that luxury of iteration, it's better to start with a very small set of customers. And once they love your product, they're going to help you in two ways. One is they help you in refining your product or refining your service, or at the same time, they're also going to be champions and ambassadors for your product, and they will help as the brand ambassadors. So in my mind, branding is nothing but it's being able to communicate exactly what you are and also wanting customers to perceive you the way you want them to perceive you. So that's about it, about branding. And now finally, the big question comes is again on the kind of infrastructure that is required, the capital that is required. So here, it really depends on the kind of company that you want to build. If it's a software-based company purely, then in this day and age, I think anybody can start with a zero capital. You can start from your dorm rooms, you can start from your homes, you can start from cafes, and there is no barrier for entry. But when somebody is looking at building something that has physical infrastructure to it, there is a real challenge. The availability of all these things is going to be a real challenge. You need space, you need expensive equipment, and you need capital. But again, the good news there is you don't actually need a lot of all of these things. So any students here who actually wanted to start, I have been through these great labs before coming here, and you can even start your company in labs like this. So it's an amazing opportunity for the new generation to start anywhere from even a hardware company. You can start from many accelerators, many of schools, universities. But again, the biggest point here is once you get your framework of breaking your idea into the smallest possible, the first milestone, that will set course for most of the things that are going forward. So that's, again, the key here also, even in building heavy infrastructure, hardware, and high capex companies, you'll have to build your thing, your idea into the smallest thing, which you can call it as a prototype or a minimum viable product, whatever. But the most important thing is progressing towards building that with minimum resources and minimum capital. So now who is going to do all of these things? So we talk about automation, we talk about AI coming, but at the same time, we also need human resources, right? So people. For most of the large corporates globally, even with the advent of what is happening, go and talk to their leaderships, their CEOs, they still say their human capital is the most valuable asset for them. But when it comes to startups and or new businesses, I would say your people are the only asset. You actually don't have anything else other than people you're working with. So it's just nothing but a group of people coming together and working towards a common goal and working under a common culture that was set up is all about a company. So people are extremely important. But with the advent of AI and the new century that we are in, we don't know how the jobs or how the kind of roles are going to look 10 years down the line. But I'm pretty confident that for the roles that are going to be there, the kind of competition and the kind of intense war between companies to have this talent is going to be immense. So it's very important to get right talent in the very early stages of a company and have them stay with you. And that is only possible with having the vision large that they're aligned with and having a great culture that only founders can set up in the initial days. And now scaling. All the aspects that I talked about, I think we should not think when we start initially about building something for scaling to a very large company, even if that is your ambition. It's all about doing the best possible and getting the best outcome at the smallest scale, and also having your systems in place, having your processes in place, not taking too many shortcuts, because whatever strategies, whatever directions you take initially, they actually tend to stay a lot with companies at a later stage. It's very hard to change them as well. But at the same time, it's a balance between trying to execute faster, and at the same time looking at the long-term plan in place as well. So that's quite important for scaling. But scaling may not be too relevant initially, but at the same time, you also have to have that eye of scaling your organization at a later stage. So while I'm talking about all these challenges, why do you want to do this, right? Why do you need to be an entrepreneur? Why do you want to build something like this when there are so many challenges I've talked about and so many uncertainties, when you can go and get a great job somewhere? So I'll go back to the aircraft analogy here. So if you see, all of us who are traveling on a plane are very interested in the destination. We don't really bother about the journey. We don't really love journey, most of us, but we are very interested in destination. The similarity with entrepreneurship or starting a company stops exactly here. Because in a company, your destination, you're never satisfied if you're only focused on your destination, because the destination keeps moving. The bigger you get, the more progress you make, your ambition gets bigger, and the goalpost keeps moving. So you'll never reach your destination. So only way you can make anything that is impactful and successful is being able to love the journey, and you have to love that journey, love that grind, love that uncertainty, a bit of going out of comfort zone, and that is what is going to make anybody, I wouldn't say more successful, but anybody being able to build something to a certain scale and impact. And with all this, I think if you are up for this kind of inconvenience and being uncomfortable, the kind of reward that you get by just not looking at the destination, the reward that you get by creating the kind of impact that you can create even at a very small scale in the world that we live in with our families, with all our surroundings that we have grown up, and that is immense, and that cannot be replaced. Thank you so much.